The server recognized me instantly the moment my family stepped into Lumarcha, the most exclusive French restaurant in the city. I caught the brief flash of understanding in his eyes, yet he maintained perfect professional composure. "Good evening," my sister declared with authority. "Reservation for the Castillo family of 4. I stayed slightly behind, watching as my parents and sister performed their usual routine. They made sure everyone noticed their designer clothes, expensive watches, and unmistakable air of belonging. They hadn't wanted to invite me to this birthday dinner, but appearances mattered. They couldn't risk people wondering why the eldest Castillo daughter was absent from her father's celebration. "This way, please," the server said, guiding us through the elegant dining room. I noticed the subtle glances from the staff and their small nods of recognition that they tried to hide. Valeria looked at my simple black dress with almost imperceptible disdain. "I'm surprised you didn't wear one of your cheap sale items," she commented sarcastically. "Some of us have different priorities than designer labels," I replied softly. "Yes, like barely affording rent in that tiny apartment," she shot back with a mocking smile. Mom gave us a warning look as we sat down. "Girls, please. It's your father's birthday." Dad was already scanning the wine list with a tense expression over the prices. I held back a smile, remembering the real wholesale costs. Valeria whispered to Mom, "Sarah definitely needs to check prices before ordering. We don't want her embarrassed." Then one of my best employees approached. My family dismissed him as just another servant. "Can you even afford this place?" Valeria continued, studying her menu. "Maybe you should only order an appetizer." That was when Ramon spoke. "Welcome back, Miss Vargas. Your usual table was reserved for another party, but I hope this one is satisfactory." Dad choked on his complimentary water. Mom dropped her menu. Valeria's face shifted from confidence to shock in an instant. "It's perfect, Ramon," I smiled. "Thank you. The usual Bordeaux, Miss Vargas?" he asked innocently. "Yes, please, the 1982. Dad's face went pale. That bottle cost more than his monthly country club dues. "Sarah," Mom said quietly, "what is going on?" I took a sip of water, savoring the moment. I didn't mention that I had bought Lumarcha 6 months ago, along with the entire restaurant group. Valeria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "But you live in that tiny apartment. You shop at normal stores," she said in disbelief. "Because I choose to," I replied simply. "Unlike some people, I don't measure success by what I wear or where I live." Ramon returned with the wine, presenting it with theatrical flair. "An excellent choice, as always, Miss Vargas. Would you like Chef Lucia to prepare your favorite dessert?" "That would be wonderful," I smiled. "And please bring us the full tasting menu. It's a special occasion after all." As Ramon walked away, silence filled the table. That kind of silence that happens when people realize they've been mocking the owner of the place. My phone vibrated, probably another update about the new London location. But it could wait. Right now I was going to enjoy watching my family process that their poor daughter not only owned this restaurant, but the entire chain of high-end establishments they love to show off. Sometimes the best revenge isn't telling them you succeeded. It's letting them discover it while they're in the middle of belittling you. The tasting menu arrived, each dish more exquisite than the last. Chef Lucia was showing off that night, knowing I was at the table. My family sat in awkward silence, picking at their food while trying to absorb their new reality. Finally Dad managed to speak, his voice tight. "How exactly did this happen?" I took a sip of the perfectly aged Bordeaux. "Remember that MBA program you refused to pay for? The one you said would never bear fruit because I focused on restaurant management instead of finance like Valeria." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Suddenly Valeria became very interested in her foie gras. "It turns out there was a market for revolutionizing high-end restaurant operations," I continued. "My company now owns 32 establishments across 3 continents." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. 32, including the one in New York, the one in Paris, and that little place in London where you celebrated your anniversary last year. I added casually. Valeria's face flushed red. "That's why we got a table immediately when I mentioned the name Castillo." "Exactly," I smiled. "Though I really shouldn't be rude to the staff here. They tell me everything." Ramon appeared with the next dish, a perfectly seared scallop not even on the regular menu. "The chef's latest creation," he announced. "Would you like your opinion, Miss Vargas, before we add it to the permanent menu?" I could see Dad calculating the value of my empire in his head. The same empire he once said I was wasting my potential on instead of joining his investment firm. The London location opens next month, I mentioned while tasting the scallop. We already have reservations booked solid for the first 3 months. London? Mom's voice was faint. But you said you couldn't afford to join us on our trip there last summer. I was there, I replied. Supervising the construction of my new restaurant. I just stayed in my penthouse instead of the family hotel. Valeria's phone vibrated, probably one of her high society friends who had seen us and spread the news about who really owned their favorite restaurant. Is that why you never moved to a bigger apartment? She asked. Why you never bought designer clothes? I prefer to invest in what matters, I replied. Like paying my staff the best salaries in the industry, providing health insurance and educational benefits, and creating something meaningful instead of just displaying wealth. The sommelier approached with another bottle of wine. Miss Vargas, that investment group is here again. They want to buy the restaurant chain. Tell them what you always tell them. Ramon, I smiled. It's not for sale, not for all the money in the world. Dad nearly dropped his glass. Investment group, Morgan Stanley, I said calmly. They've been trying to acquire us for months. They offered 12 times earnings last week. The expression on his face, the investment banker who had dismissed my business plan years ago, was priceless. Mom leaned forward. Darling, why didn't you tell us? We've been so worried about you living so modestly. Because success isn't about showing off, Mom, it's about building something real. I gestured to the elegant dining room. Everything I own, I built myself, without family money, without connections, without a trust fund. Valeria's face went from shock to calculation. So, we still need to make reservations in advance? Your name no longer guarantees special treatment, I interrupted sweetly. In fact, you might find that some of our locations are mysteriously full when you call. The dessert cart arrived with Chef Lucia's famous soufflé, accompanied by an aged port that cost more than Valeria's designer bag. Happy birthday, Dad. I raised my glass. Consider this dinner my gift. Just like every time you've eaten in one of my restaurants this past year. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just owning the restaurant. It's realizing they've unknowingly depended on your generosity the whole time. The port was excellent, almost as excellent as watching my family swallow their pride along with their dessert. By the time coffee was served, the entire dynamic at the table had completely changed. Valeria's condescension was gone, replaced by awkward attempts at flattery. Mom kept mentioning friends who would love to invest in my next project. Dad mostly stayed silent and stunned, no doubt thinking of all the times he had bragged about Valeria's junior position in his firm while dismissing my little restaurant job. Miss Vargas, Ramon approached again. Chef Lucia requests your presence in the kitchen whenever convenient. The London menu needs your final approval. Valeria nearly jumped from her seat. Can I come? I'd love to see. The kitchen is only for staff and owners, I interrupted politely. You understand. Mom tried a different approach. Darling, you must let us organize a celebration. To think our daughter is such a successful restaurant owner. How funny, I finished. That wasn't worth celebrating when you thought I only managed one place. Ramon appeared with a folder, the wine list for London. Miss Vargas, Mr. Thompson called about the Tokyo location. Dad's head snapped up. The Tokyo opening will be next spring, I confirmed. Though I'm sure Valeria can tell you all about it. She was there last month trying to use the Castillo name to get a reservation at my Paris restaurant. Valeria had the grace to blush. She didn't know that the staff reported every attempt to drop my name. Every rude word to my employees. Every complaint about prices. I smiled. I know everything that happens in my restaurants. I stood up, smoothing my simple dress. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to speak with my chef. But it's your father's birthday dinner, Mom protested. I've already paid for it, I said. Just like every meal you've eaten in my establishments. I pointed to Ramon. Please make sure my family has everything they need. Add the usual tip to their account. There you go. As I walked toward the kitchen, Chef Lucia greeted me with her usual enthusiasm and showed me the planned menu for London. While we discussed wine pairings and seasonal specials, I could see my family through the kitchen window, huddled in conversation. My phone vibrated with messages. One from Valeria, sorry for everything, for how we treated you. One from Mom, we were wrong, so wrong. And finally one from Dad, I never saw this. Your vision, your potential, can we talk? I wrote one reply to all of them. Reservations required. 3-month waiting list. No exceptions. Then I returned my focus to my chef's brilliant creations. To the empire I had built while they weren't looking. To the success they never imagined. Later that night, as I walked through my modest apartment, actually the entire top floor of the building, minimally furnished because that's how I like it, I looked at the framed article from the day I bought Lumasha. Unknown buyer transforms struggling restaurant into culinary empire. Unknown, underestimated, unstoppable. I picked up my phone and sent one final message to my family. The next time you judge someone's worth, remember that the person you're looking down on might actually own the ground you're standing on. Then I opened my laptop to review the plans for the Tokyo location. After all, success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about continuing to prove yourself right. And sometimes the best flavor isn't in the finest wine or the perfect souffle. It's in the moment they realize they've been dining on your success the whole time. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.